Switzerland never had an imposed lockdown for the industry. But so, some companies, quite many actually, they have reduced their production for some weeks. And this was due to several reasons. There were supply chain difficulties, unsecure situation as such all over the world, and postponement of orders and projects. But having said that, in Switzerland, we were always allowed to go to the office, to work be it in the industry or in the offices, but of course always keeping the 2-meter distance, social distancing, just the measures that the governments imposed to keep the situation under control. But now, slowly, the daily life starts to retake in Switzerland. Shops are opening again. So also magazines, shops for textiles, for apparel, they are reopening again. And we are now on a way out of the lockdown. Talking about the Cematex countries, of course, these are 9 countries. They were differently hit and also in different stages hit by COVID-19. But it can be said some of them had to stop production totally and had to close their sites, and others, as Switzerland as well, could continue with their production. But all of these countries are now on their way out of the lockdown. European countries, as said before, were badly hit in the last 2 to 3 months. And this was a very unique situation in every way, be it for the health and both for private and for business activities. Speaking for Switzerland now, of course, our members, they were also affected very hard by this crisis. Many projects are being delayed, and some, of course, also cancelled. So this had quite an impact on our industry. If I now broaden up a bit and talk more about the whole Swiss machine industry, not only talking about the textile machine industry, we can say we are a small economy as such, Switzerland, so we are very strongly integrated in international value chain. So the export share of our whole machine industry in Switzerland is around 80%, and for textile machinery, it's close to 100%. So the massive decline in demand that we had in important sales market, be it in the EU, in the US, in Asia, that had a very, very strong impact on our industry. Then in addition, we still have a very strong currency, so the Swiss franc is very strong. And that in combination also with the travel restrictions that we have all around the world, this led in a very strong decline in capacity utilization, and then of course which had a huge impact on the profits. Our country predicts at the moment a decline of the GDP for this year in Switzerland of 6.7%, and this is a figure for our country which hasn't been predicted for probably the last 100 years. So yes, for the export industry, we really need a recovery in demand in the respective markets for our industry. And yes, we also hope that this, together with less travel restrictions, and we come to further points later on, will help the industry to regain momentum. Now, looking at the long term, now looking back again at the textile machinery industry, when I look at the long term, I'm very confident for our member companies. Within the Swiss Textile Machinery Association, we have 44 members, and we've once summed up the years of experience since they were founded, and we come to a massive figure of 4,060 years. So meaning that those 44 members, if you like, take the average, they all in average are more than 90 years old. So it is an industry with very long history, with tradition, and meaning also having gone through a number of ups and downs over the last 90, 100, sometimes 150 years since they exist. So of course it is a tough time. Everybody around the world is hit by COVID-19, but for our Swiss textile machinery industry, as well as for the European textile machinery industry, I'm very confident that they manage through these difficult times and will anticipate ways to develop their business now and in the time to come. Here I want to first speak with my Cematex hat. There I would say that the interaction with the companies itself is mainly done via our 9 national associations. So there my impact is more talking to my 9 colleagues in the countries and having some exchange of how the situation in their respective countries is. But as I said, the communication to the members, to the textile machinery manufacturers is with the country association. Now talking for Switzerland and for the Swiss Textile Machinery Association, first we had a lot of requests with respect to the with the labor law. Of course, in such a crisis, there are many changes, and our government has imposed quite a number of help and of support to member companies. So there was a lot of discussion with our members and helping them getting through the changes that happened every day. In Switzerland, we have a tool called for short-term work, where you can get a compensation, so people just work part-time and the other part of the salary is paid by a fund. So in Switzerland, also the number that would not have been, you wouldn't have expected such a number, but taking not the textile machinery industry, but the whole Swiss workforce at the moment, 37% of the whole Swiss workforce are in such a short working scheme. And of course, for our industry, it's probably even a bit more, as said, because we are so much export oriented, and the difficulties in the export, in the global export, are still there. So, but apart from supporting them in labor law, we of course also have activities where we support them with individual, very often individual opportunities to develop their internal processes and structures. And I think times of crisis really are an important moment to also work for the future, to work on internal processes, be it from lean manufacturing, it can be, but also in development of new applications, of developing the existing portfolio. So we have various schemes where we, together with external experts, provide support to our member companies that they can use if they want. And I think that individual support is something very important in such times of crisis as we are in now. And of course, we already hope and plan for the future post-COVID, so also on B2B meetings with customers in markets. Of course, it's too early now. We don't see that in 2020 there will be a lot of physical meetings possible, but also here we try to evaluate which options there are with respect also to virtual meeting with customers. Well, as you all know, I mean, the COVID-19 crisis has hit different parts of the world in different times. So where some countries stopped very early, but China is slowly taking up again now already with business. Other countries, they stayed active some longer, but they are now in their, in the worst phase of the crisis. So of course already this gave a little shift in different markets where activities were still possible or are already possible again. But one country that I often hear when I talked to my members, that they still see quite a considerable activity of investment is Uzbekistan. That is a country that is mentioned quite often. And one reason for that is that Uzbekistan is really developing their textile strategy, so the textile supply chain strategy. And with this enlargement of this strategy, there is also further need for machines, and this is one of the countries that our members have quite really look at and hope to see some positive development even in these very difficult times. Before answering your question, I would like to mention that Swiss companies, Swiss textile machinery companies, they also have helped to minimize the supply shortage of face masks that we had in our country. We didn't have a production site of face masks in Switzerland. So this was something that was found, of course, being very severe in the crisis. And we had one company who helped to bring one machine into Switzerland. And we have several textile machinery manufacturers who now went into textile production for the face mask. These are mainly community masks, so just for going out, but not for the hospitals. But those community masks, they have very good values, they got certificates, and they now help to shorten the supply of face masks that we had during the last weeks and months. But we can say that now with those and with the imports from several countries, meanwhile, the issue on shortage of face masks has been solved in Switzerland. But now coming back to your question, well, the long-term challenges for our industry, they stay unchanged or move even more into the limelight. I mean, I think that the buzzwords that we've heard over the last month and years, like sustainable production method, circular economy is coming in, digitalization, they all remain. And I think I said before, it is crucial for our industry and for all our members that they really now continue to work on these things that they of course already work on for quite a while, but the crisis should not stop, but will for sure give a boost, especially on themes like the digitalization, where we really see that this will help in many ways for the future. Unfortunately, I don't think that the industry will recover very soon? Well, the reasons are manifold. There are the interrupted supply chains. There are reduced supply capacities. There is reduced liquidity for both manufacturers and customers. And as someone recently told me when I was talking about this theme as well, he said to me, well, buying clothes, at least in our countries, often has something to do with a fun factor. You like doing something good to you, you go shopping, you buy something nice. And I think we all agree that for the time being, there is not a lot of fun factor when buying clothes. So this means that textile consumption will probably stay reduced for quite a long time to come. And of course, reduced consumption then for our industry means less need for textile machines. So it will stay for a while with us until we see back in a somewhat pre-COVID-19 normal textile consumption. Switzerland, all shops apart from food and pharmacy were closed for about 4 weeks, but they could reopen about 3 to 4 weeks ago. And since then, all shops are open again. But what you really see from the first interviews that you hear or the store managers is, yes, shops are open again. And yes, there are people again coming in shopping. But when you look at the turnover of those shops, be it from apparel to furniture, anything you name it, the turnovers in the shops are definitely still much lower than they were before the crisis, because people, they are still really thinking of, do I really need that? Do I really need this? And they are not yet ready, if there's not a real need, or at least many of them are not yet ready to go into the cities, to go into the shops, to shop for apparel, for furniture, and so on. So I think it will take a number of months, hopefully not years, but I would say a number of months for sure, until we get back to a kind of a normal consumption pattern. Yes. They for sure help. We also in Switzerland, we also had such a package where, for example, companies could get a credit to be paid back, but that was very informal. They could get the credit within 24 hours nearly after applying the documents. It was just a very brief check, and where the government then also stays behind in case they cannot pay it back. So yes, there were a lot of stimuli, especially to make sure that not a lot of companies go into bankruptcy immediately. So for sure it will help the whole system to somehow survive somehow, and it will also for sure help to come back to normal sooner than without any of those packages. I think that is very clear. But how much the impact then will be on, of course, that's now very hard to say, but I'm sure that the packages that our governments have done, yes, the situation would definitely be much worse in many countries without having this support. But having said that, of course, the depth of our countries now are, of course, huge, and it will take years. In Switzerland, they now talk if it might take up to 30 years, to get the depth down again for something that has now brought us over 2 months. So, I mean, you also have to see, of course, the dimensions we talk in, and they are quite severe. Well, for sure, and this is not in our scope, so to say, but it's interesting, the tourism industry, restaurant, hospitality has of course also been hit very hard, because they are now also they had to close very early in the crisis, and they are probably the last ones to reopen now after the crisis. So first of all, they had quite a long lockdown. They had really had a lockdown, these industries. And now, as said, the travel bans, they were, of course, I mean, in Europe, we had the open borders, and this is something that I personally, I nearly can't imagine the times before that, and that now has been very severely hit, the free movement of people. And with Switzerland, I mean, for like, let's say, holiday or shopping tourism, the borders are still closed. They'll be closed until somewhere mid-June. What has reopened now, or what is reopening, is like business permits. So if you have an important customer meeting or need to do an inspection of your machine or some service, so these transported, that is possible again now. And there was also a lot of lobbying from our association to have that possible again, so that to start running business again. But yes, for the hospitality industry, I think we do the same as probably most countries do. We propose our own people to do holiday this summer season in their own country, which for Switzerland, yes, it's okay, but it can never cover, be it the tourists from India, from European countries, from the US. I mean, there were so many, and that, of course, for this year will not be possible. And in addition, they also have to keep these social distancing rules, which doesn't allow them to have the same number of people that they have in a restaurant and so on. So yes, this is an industry definitely also very badly hit all over the world, I guess, by this crisis.